Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today we're returning to the subject of TerraMaster and TOS 7, their latest software update. Originally in 2025 going through alpha and beta variations, the last time we checked in on this software was right at the tail end of 2025. Now, with the release of a new NAS system from them in the next few weeks, the F4425 Pro, today we're going to be revisiting TOS 7. The brand has reached out to me to sponsor this video, but they are asking me to take TOS 7 for a tour. Look at some of the features that are in there, some of the UX design, the implementation of some of the Linux kernel. Look at some of the AI features. Don't worry, we won't be going into too much detail on those in this video. We'll probably pop that in its own standalone video and ultimately see just how far TOS 7 has come. So if I move over here and we get ourselves in front of the screen, hopefully screen recording is up and running. Later on we will be talking about some of that AI functionality, the integration of OpenClaw as well. Again, completely optional, but I do think it's worth touching on it because arguably they have gone about it in a way that other brands haven't. I'm actually really impressed by the native integration of some of these features and services that TerraMaster have included. Again, it's all optional, you don't have to do it, but I just wanted to touch on that. Now, if you go to their own website, I would say they are covering a lot of the salient improvements that TOS 7 is bringing to the fold, not only over TOS 6, but compared with some of the other NAS brands out there. But if I had to give them one quick note, I would say for all of the good this page is doing about TOS 7, maybe include some of the benefits that TOS 6 has already established. It seemingly kind of overlooks a lot of the really good stuff that I saw in TOS 6, which they've taken for granted that users know about. So if you're listening to this TerraMaster, and if you're sponsoring this video, it seems weird if you're not, I would strongly recommend integrating some of the great features of TOS 6, some of which I'm going to talk about today. But straight away, we've got this slightly new tweaked user interface here. Again, it's highly, I would argue, a lot more engaging. Definitely the more uniformity across a lot of the text, the UX. Definitely new icons have been established across the fold. Same goes, by the way, if you are going to take advantage of their client tool there. This is logging into the client tool via the UI. We can get the real-time information there. But again, that allows you to manage a lot of the TerraSync servers, manage a lot more of those synchronization and backup tasks, not only between your client system and the NAS, but also NAS to NAS and other platforms. And we'll be returning to the subject of TerraSync later on. But while we are talking about backups, I will highlight that if you go into the dedicated backup appliance, something I talked about before, notwithstanding this topographical map, which is giving you real-time information about exactly what tools do what in a 3D map, something I wish we saw more brands do. From here, you're able to pretty much manage everything. And remember earlier when I mentioned that TerraMaster needs to make a lot more noise alongside TOS 7 about the things they've already integrated. This is a great example of that because loads of these are features and services that have always been there. They've just been better knitted together. So from this single portal interface, for those that are really focusing on a TerraMaster NAS for backups, you've got your simplified managing of rsync backups. That is servers on the local area network taking advantage of rsync. Alongside that, you can take advantage of the snapshots, which aren't strictly backups, of course, but it's nice they're all rolled in to the same gateway. And again, all of these options, by the way, have got their own dedicated portals. This is just an aggregated input if you want it. Mac users, Apple Time Machine, Centralized backup. This is where you'll be able to back up, by the way, your local systems. So for example, there's the backup information. I can go ahead and start creating a recoverable ISO image to back up to my local system if I choose. But the centralized backup agent is ultimately about me wanting to connect my local machine with this, and this is managed from within this interface. So for example, if we go into the centralized backup application, we're able to see alongside all of this huge myriad of apps and services, so many ways in which we can integrate between our local system and this. That goes down, by the way, to physical servers, it goes down to virtual servers, it goes down to virtual space online, and as you can see, I've already mapped this Windows system, and then from here, start creating that task. This is an OS level backup alongside file folder backup if I choose to. And again, choose the folder destination. You're already running the client on your local system and there are apps and services for different OSs. And then from there, work your way through scheduling the task. How many versions of the backup do you want in place? And that's it. You can action it. All managed from within the NAS, and all you had to do on the local system was have the client in place. Returning back to the TerraMaster app here, again, Some of the bells and whistles do not need you to go into the web browser. You can run this client tool, and this works, by the way, whether it's on the local area network or if you want to do this using the remote T-Online service there. That is, if you want to connect this to the remote access service from TerraMaster or integrating third-party services if you choose. It's all much more intuitive now, and that is the big takeaway we're going to be going through throughout the course of this video. Things just knit together better. Now, it's not perfect. One of my big complaints during the beta, this menu, which I absolutely hate, is still there. You know, it'll be, great if we didn't already have this menu. I don't understand why we need both, but never mind. Improvement on the file folder manager. So this is that native file folder access is really good. Notwithstanding, they've now integrated tabs. So again, moving data back and forth between different areas of the NAS have all been created. So again, if you're creating that encrypted safe box, if you are migrating and connecting to remote folders via Google or other third-party supported services. So for example, if we want, we can add a brand new creative share there, or within the remote folder we can add even more shared folders if we choose. Disconnect, manage those if we choose to. Loads of different options, whether it is to a remote access NAS on the network or over the internet, or taking advantage of cloud drive services with multiple vendors supported there. Moving away from that, going back into the file folder manager, not only have you got all of the breadcrumb level control you would expect. So for example, we'll go into this external drive here, where I've got multiple external drives all connected over USB, each of which I've ensured being used for different things. We can monitor that storage access, restrict certain user access to it if we pick, or utilize some of the integrated backup tools that I've already touched upon to allow you to create either USB to USB backups, allow you to create folder to folder backups. So for example, we can go for TFM backup, which is a folder to folder simplified backup system that you can use between individual folders, connected storage media and more. But if you want to go for something a little bit more out there, a little bit more, level to what we expect from a storage manager, again, that is where the backup area will lead you through, and you can close that down. And that is where you can take advantage of cloud synchronization. You can take advantage of that TerraSync application that we mentioned for managing the synchronized pinned backup file synchronization between your clients there with version control. Think of this as TerraMaster's alternative to something like Synology Drive. I will say they're still yet to integrate localized client file pinning and streaming to the same degree, but a lot of the options are there via that similarly parallel running portal. And again, you can manage a lot of these things here via the app interface, with a lot of these bells and whistles and apps and services being added to either the localized client or adding them into that web browser experience there. So again, you've got that lovely parallel experience at all times. And fair play to them, they do go out of their way to detail just exactly what each of the applications and services are for, and also usage scenarios, all detailed within that backup portal. I really like this kind of integration, one pane of glass access to each of the individual tools. The only thing that's missing from this, I would argue, is a similarly clear layout of all of your backups in real time. But talking about changes in design and layout of information, we can go into the storage manager. And the storage manager has seen a huge overhaul in the way data is laid out in front of you. So for example, as you can see, a resynchronization of a storage pool for another video I'm working on happening there in the background is taking place. But individual disks, the way data is laid out in front of you is a great deal more visual than it's been before, as well as the integration of performance testing, benchmark testing, smart tests, and if you are adding Seagate disks, access to that Seagate Wolf Health Management tool there. So all of it has been detailed and laid out a great deal more clearly than it has been before. And that runs down, by the way, to access to those USB ports we mentioned earlier, but also the caching. Interestingly, they're one of the few brands that I know of that allow you to take advantage of both read and write caching on a single SSD. Now, I know there is a school of thought that you probably shouldn't do that, because write caching, if the drive fails, means you don't have the redundancy and therefore the recovery potential of having two disks in write cache. But some users want to get by on just one disk, so at the very least you've got that option to take advantage of one disk. Although if you do that, it does present an option to you, just letting you know that using write cache on a single SSD isn't advisable. It's just giving you that flexibility, and flexibility is kind of where they've gone with this, trying to find a line between a number of the different NAS players in the market right now that provide either rigid but very responsive software, or freedom to do what you want to do with the risk of it becoming unstable or becoming troublesome, the TOS 7 update seemingly finds a middle ground, allowing you to do pretty much anything you can do on any other NAS brand right now, but doing it with still a degree of flourishing usability. They've really spent a lot of time rejigging and reworking a lot of this layout here, and they've not done it at the expense of security either. So for example, the security scanner, I've run a scan earlier on, and this is something that brands that we've mentioned recently like Ugreen, who are making a lot of moves in the market right now, have still yet to integrate, bafflingly. This gives you an example of the security scanner. You run that scan, I've just run it, and it's telling me one of my passwords is weak, I'm not accessing this via a secure HTTP, and the version still needs to be updated. Everything here is detailed. What it could stand to have, as you can see when you pop it out, detail on how to resolve would be handy. You can configure it, but just an idea of the impact and implication in a little bit more detail would be nice. That said, it's still a huge amount of information being presented to me, and direct integration with the way to resolve a lot of these things built directly into the storage manager, the security manager there. In fact, going back to the security manager, remember earlier when I mentioned they need to add more stuff from TOS 6 on here? Hell, they should add stuff from TOS 5, like isolation mode. One of the things that this brand has that no one else does. Security isolation mode allows me at one click to kill off third-party PHP, kill off other users other than local admin users, and disable a lot of the remote access services, which cannot be reversed until a full reboot. This is lovely. I've said it a dozen times, and I really want this brand to say this and talk about this feature more and more, because they simply don't. Going back, we can make our way into more of those security settings there. So we come out of that. We can have a little look at the login credential password policy, two-factor authentication, whether you want to take advantage of third-party or custom certificates, firewall control, and aside from that, you can make your way into some of the network stuff here. And they've really improved a lot of the network management, notwithstanding that you can now integrate Wi-Fi adapters into the device. Also, it's a great deal more visually clear, the identity and the usability of different network configurations and the ports themselves on this device, as well as allowing you on the fly to create that vSwitch, which is going to be invaluable for running the VMs. Talking of VMs, we've got to talk about the fact they've now rolled out their own first-party virtual machine tool. Up until then, you were relying on using things like VirtualBox, whereas now you can integrate VMs directly into the OS, a great deal more efficient and easier access to the features and facilities there. Again, there's just a lot to love here in TOS 7, and you can definitely feel the improvements. And yes, I'm accessing this on the local area network, and maybe your mileage may vary on remote level access, but I'll say right now, I have been using this device now for several hours. Let's bring up the uptime on this device. Let's go into the hardware. And in that time, it has been responsive. I've got levels of control that other brands aren't offering me. And the whole time, this system is just doing the job and delivering on what I want it to do. But what about if I am a slightly more finicky user? What if I'm someone that wants a bit of outside the box thinking? Well, integrated there into the desktop is the terminal at any moment, but alongside that, I can go into developer mode. And developer mode here is something they do detail on their pages. Ultimately, developer mode allows you to take advantage of a lot more customization on this. You just need to know what you are doing. And I kind of wish they password locked developer mode. The fact, yes, I'm in an admin account, but I don't like the idea I can just turn that on and off. It does give a warning in a message, but maybe stick a few more layers in front of that TerraMaster. And again, if you do want to take advantage of, for example, SSH, so if I want to allow SSH, I need more layers, things stopping me doing that so easily. It's good that they're there, but I do think there needs to be more preemptive warnings about some of these features and facilities moving forward. All that said, the standard features and functionality that I have criticised other NAS brands that have emerged in the last few years, all of the features are here. Everything from air gapping on the fly when I need to easy hibernation management and fan control management. Again, having a software and a hardware built in unison generally means you can enable these things very easily there. And if we go down to the device monitor, if we look at the hardware, it's just a lot clearer than it was in previous iterations. I know what I'm looking at, broken down to the individual component, and it's all visually appealing to me now. It's just a great deal clearer, and a lot of work in TOS 7 has clearly gone into a lot of the criticism that myself and others have given this brand about how information is being relayed. Things feel just that much clearer. Snapshot management. It's clear now, the number of snapshots, what you can do, the restoration of different snapshots. It's all really easy, and assigning these things, it's just a lot clearer. That was always one of the other consistent problems with TerraMaster products. They did the job, but the software never felt like it was being truly responsive in the way that it is here. Whether it is you want to manage those individual Docker applications and services, or you're going to be going to the application center to download the first or third party, or use the community application center to get some other homebrew apps and services, they're all here. I'm still not in love with the fact that Community Place has this kind of weird number of downloads per cycle thing going on. I really think they need to remove that. I know they have to keep this platform supported, but it's hard to swallow that when it is a paid turnkey platform. And I know devs have to be paid, but still nonetheless, this feels a bit icky in this context and feels like something you'd find more in an open source software only NAS platform. But still, the range of apps and services has expanded massively, and the usability of individual apps, and I know I'm laboring this point over and over, is better than it has ever been. Whether it is using third-party Plex or Jellyfin or Home Assistant tools, or using the first-party applications for backup file management, cloud synchronization, and more. It's all just being presented and usable a great deal more easily here. And while I'm going through this, by the way, I should also highlight, I'm sure TerraMaster would want me to say this, and again, they are sponsoring this, so why not? Let's play fair. You can just go ahead and test out the software. You just click here on that main page, I'll link to it below, and you can knock around with this software for yourself and try it out. You don't have to rely on some knobber on the internet and what he thinks. Now, I do want to talk very briefly about OpenClaw here. The reason I want to talk about it, I know it's not for everyone, but it's more about the way OpenClaw has been integrated on this platform. Now, they are not the first brand to add OpenClaw as an app. To go into the App Center, find OpenClaw and click download. Stick in your API key from your your remote LLM of choice and stick it in there. What separates them in this case is it has hard-baked skills that are specifically relevant to TerraMaster and TOS. You find it running individual actions suitable just for this system. So asking it questions of what has been happening in the logs, can you create me a new shared folder? All of these are things that I've been running here in the background to success. There's that new test share. So while I'm talking to you here, let's get the device to create a new share. Let's just copy and paste my line from earlier. Let's find that one along the way. So we'll create a new share, and we'll just call this one, give this a share titled YouTube Share. And we'll get that running there in the background. And while it does that, this is now going to start using contextual TOS options to get that job done. Now, again, this video is not about how good or bad OpenClaw is, but you can, while that's going on, use a lot of the background skills, use a lot of the connections with remote access services and the agent skills to connect WhatsApp and stuff like that, and therefore allow you to control your TerraMaster NAS via human language via your devices. Now, do keep in mind, you are using third-party deployed AI LLMs here that are remote, and you might not want to do that. A lot of this is controlled and separated during the installation of OpenClaw, so at the very least you can have that done. And as you can see, YouTube Share was created. We can make our way in. Let's refresh the shared folder, and there is our YouTube Share. It's that straightforward. Whether it is you want to create new users, create a new user called Betty and give her the password 1, and it will do that in the background and start creating ourselves a new user, just like I did earlier on with the user Alan. Get the system to analyze the logs. So if you want to know what's been happening on your NAS for the last 20 to 25 minutes, you can say access the logs. So access the logs and tell me the activity of the NAS over the last hour. it will do that. Yes, you've had to grant it access, and you can deny that access at any time. And I appreciate OpenClaw utilization is not going to be for everyone. But as you can see in the earlier messages when I asked that question earlier, get it loading those ones in while it does that there in the background, it will go through the details of what's happened in the past. Just can't cycle there because it is in the middle of a discussion. Let's go to there, fast forward. And as you can see, now it's starting to load in what's been going on in the last hour of the system. And I could have done that from my mobile using WhatsApp, or I could have used TerraMaster's own mobile application in conjunction with some of the pre-existing services. But you will have to enable remote access on the system. So as I say, it's not going to be for everyone. But just bear in mind, you do still have a modicum of control of what you can and cannot do on these applications. So whether it is you want to configure them within their initial installation, or you go into the user access settings and adapt what individual users and programs can do, you have that level of control. And that's what's really, really important. And there is Betty there, created there in the background. I just wanted to touch on OpenClaw integration here, because this is the smoothest on-ramp towards OpenClaw on a NAS I've ever seen. I know it feels like I'm labouring a point over and over. The point I'm trying desperately to extend across here is that the TerraMaster TOS platform has always had a lot of the bones of what I want in a NAS platform in 2026. It's got write once, read many. It's got encrypted shared folders if I choose to. It's got varying degrees of those cache options I mentioned earlier on. It's got support of iSCSI straight out of the gate, and it's always been there. It's just being better presented in this new iteration of their software. Everything from running a VPN server easily with multiple protocols and architectures available out of the gate. Cloud synchronization we've already talked about, but also support natively of Plex Media Server and Jellyfin with apps in the application center, something that weirdly is not available everywhere. Running the web server again, all of it with the same UX, same design and presentation standard. That's always been the gap, and all of it with different apps and levels of control and permissions, all of it hardwired into the base level of this software. Again, there's just a lot to love here, and I'm sure if you are someone that utilizes another NAS brand, I refuse to accept that while you're watching this, even a Synology user watching this and not thinking, do you know what, I think it's worth a punt. And as I say, go and test it out. It's not going to cost you a penny to test out the demo. You don't have to take my word for it. I'll say it over and over again. And if those things don't work for you, if it doesn't appeal to you, if the new design aesthetic, the bells, the whistles, the widgets, the controls, the notifications, the alerts, the presentation of information isn't doing it for you, then you have to wonder, why did you come to this video in the first place? Did you come to this video because you wanted to see if the grass was greener? Or did you come to this video because you were actually thinking about getting a TerraMaster? And I really want to talk to you in the comments, because I'm someone that's been deep in the world of turnkey NAS software now for what feels like 1 billion years, and this feels good. I'm not suggesting it couldn't do with some more love. The Photos application, for example, still feels design-wise, although the features and facilities are there. These are images from when I attended DSM 7.4. All the sharing is there, facial recognition, AI services are built in, all the bells and whistles are there, but arguably there's little things like this that could still do with a pinch of polish. But it's getting there, crucially, and just how much you can do currently, and particularly now with the uniform design choice across the whole board, will hopefully bring forward a lot of the appeal of this platform. The brand just needs to do a better job telling people what TOS can do. And I'm glad they sat on this beta for much, much longer than they did previous iterations of TOS. But still, please, if you do have 20 minutes to spare, just go to the comments, test out that online beta, and let me know in the comments what you think. There's going to be cynics watching this going, well, this is a sponsored video, why should I care? And you're right to think that. It's good to be skeptical. But I felt this way about TOS for the longest time, and if they're going to sponsor me to say stuff that I already think, it would be madness not to. But let me know what you guys think. Is there something missing in TOS 7? let me know. I'm sure they're going to read the comments. But for now, I've got to say TOS 7 is currently as close to perfect as I ever wanted this software to be. Now it really is just little bits of spit and polish, little bits of keeping everything in line. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I look forward to talking to you about the F4 425 Pro in the coming weeks when it launches. And apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.